The rain poured heavily that night, drumming against the pavement as Jungkook tightened his coat around himself. He hadn't expected to find a woman lying in the middle of the deserted road, barely conscious, blood pooling around her. Panic surged through him, but his instincts took over. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was urgent, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing dark, tear-filled eyes. "He left me," she whispered before slipping back into unconsciousness. Jungkook wasted no time. He carried her to his car and sped to the hospital. Hours later, when she finally woke up, he learned her name, Tessy, a 32-year-old woman whose husband had not only abandoned her but had also left her for dead. Over the following weeks, they became friends. Tessy, still recovering, insisted on thanking Jungkook for saving her life. She invited him over for dinner, and Jungkook, unable to resist the magnetic pull he felt toward her, accepted. But he lied. He told her he was 25, a businessman. He didn't know why he said it, but something about Tessy made him want to be seen as more than just a college student. That night, over wine and soft jazz, something shifted between them. They weren't just a broken woman and the stranger who saved her. They were two people finding comfort in each other. One night turned into two. Two turned into stolen kisses. But then, Tessy got a job offer. After months of struggling, she finally secured a teaching position at Jungkook's college. The moment she walked into the lecture hall, she felt her breath hitch. Jungkook was sitting in the front row, eyes wide with shock. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The woman he had been sneaking around with, the one he had dreamed about, was now standing at the front of the class. "Jungkook." Tessy's voice was barely above a whisper. A heavy silence settled in the room as Jungkook looked at her, unable to form words. "You lied to me," she finally said, her voice trembling with anger. "You told me you were 25. Businessman. But you're a student. In my class." Jungkook swallowed hard, guilt crashing over him. "Tessy, Nope." She held up a hand, her face hardening. "We're done." From that day on, she ignored him. No stolen glances. No accidental touches. She was his lecturer and he was just another student. But fate wasn't done with them yet. One afternoon, Tessy was walking past the cafeteria when she heard Jungkook's voice. She had promised herself she wouldn't pay attention, but something made her stop. "So, who was she?" one of Jungkook's friends teased. "You've been acting weird lately." Jungkook hesitated before scoffing. "She was just a one-night mistake, okay? Drop it." Tessy felt like the ground had been ripped from under her. A mistake. Tears stung her eyes as she stormed away. She had been stupid to think he had actually cared. Jungkook, unaware she had overheard, sat there, his heart aching at the lie. He had only said that to avoid his friend's interrogation. The truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Days turned into weeks. Tessy refused to acknowledge his existence. Until one morning when she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, a pregnancy test trembling in her hands. Positive. Panic and fear clashed inside her. This couldn't be happening. Jungkook found out when it was already too late. She had been rushed to the hospital for complications, the doctor had said. By the time Jungkook arrived, breathless and desperate, Tessy was gone. She had died. Jungkook stood frozen, his entire world crumbling. He had never told her he loved her. He had never told her the truth. His parents were in shock when his sister revealed the truth. A 32-year-old woman. "Jungkook, what have you done?" his mother gasped. But Jungkook couldn't hear them. His mind was stuck on one thing: his child. Jungkook sat in stunned silence as the doctor's words echoed in his head. "I'm sorry, but we lost her." His hands trembled. His world collapsed. Tessy was gone. She had died carrying his child. The pain was unbearable. The weight of regret crushed him. He should have protected her. He should have told her the truth earlier. But nothing could change the fact that she was dead. Jungkook disappeared from the world. No more music, no more business meetings. He became a ghost, haunted by what-ifs. Until one day his sister, his only link to reality, came to him with shocking news. She's alive, Jungkook. His breath caught in his throat. What? She's in a private hospital. They faked her death because she was in critical condition. But she's alive. His heart slammed against his chest. He had mourned her, believed he had lost her forever. And now she was still here. Jungkook stormed into the hospital, his face pale, his body shaking with nervous energy. And there she was, Tessy, alive. Her body was weak, her eyes hollow from the near-death experience. But when she saw him standing at the door, her face hardened. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Jungkook took slow, hesitant steps forward. "I thought you were dead." Tessy let out a bitter laugh. "Would that have been easier for you?" His jaw tightened. "Don't say that." She turned her head away. "Why are you here, Jungkook? What do you want from me?" His eyes flickered to her stomach. She followed his gaze and instinctively placed a protective hand over the barely there bump. "Our baby," he whispered. Tessy let out a shaky breath. For weeks, she had been preparing herself for this moment. The moment he'd come back into her life. "I don't need anything from you," she said coldly. "I'll raise this baby on my own." Jungkook clenched his fists. "You don't get to decide that alone." Her eyes blazed. "Oh, and what do you want, Jungkook? To take responsibility now? To pretend like you care? I've always cared." His voice cracked. "I lied to you, but not about my feelings." Tessy's heart wavered for just a moment. But then she remembered his words to his friends. She was just a one-night mistake, bro. She forced herself to stay strong. "Leave," she whispered. Jungkook stepped closer. "Tessy, I said leave." His chest tightened, but he nodded. "I'll give you time. But I'm not walking away from this. From you. From our baby." And with that he left. But his promise hung heavy in the air. Jungkook's absence from the music industry didn't go unnoticed. His fans, the media, everyone started to speculate. Where was the mysterious artist? Why had he disappeared? And then one day the news broke. Jungkook John, heir to the John Empire, rumored to be expecting a child with an older woman. It was chaos. His family was in shock. His parents summoned him immediately. "You got a 32-year-old woman pregnant." His mother nearly screamed. His father's face was unreadable. "A professor?" Jungkook exhaled. "Yes." His sister sat beside him, smirking. "Honestly, this is the most exciting thing to happen to this family in years." Their mother shot her a glare before turning back to Jungkook. "What were you thinking?" "That I love her," he said simply. Silence. His father leaned back in his chair. "And does she love you?" Jungkook faltered. He didn't know. "Not anymore." "I'll find out," he said. And he meant it. Tessy didn't expect the sudden knock on her door. She opened it, only to find Jungkook standing there, with the media swarming behind him. Her eyes widened. "What the hell are you doing?"